Yo, what's going on, guys? Chase the Bro here, and welcome back to another Dark Souls 3 DLC weapon showcase. Today's episode is dedicated to Ledos Greathammer, so if any of you love playing with monstrous weapons, then you're gonna love this. Since the release of the Ring City, many weapons have been added to this game, and this one is by far the heaviest weapon. It's a pure strength weapon with a requirement of 60 strength, because it's such a beast. So you're limited to what types of build you can use this with. Most of the time, if you're trying to keep your level around the meta, you're going to only have a pure strength build while using this. Which is perfect since the release of patch 1.13, because the hyper armor is now working the way it was intended to. Before this patch, I found strength builds to be a little bit underwhelming, so I never personally made one and used it for PvP. I tried it out a few times and it never worked as well as I'd like it to, but now I'm actually in love with strength builds. I also noticed that if you have a build focused on one stat, such as a strength build, you're pouring all your points into strength, you're actually going to have lots of points left over. So I was actually able to put 40 points into my vitality, which is pretty amazing because it upped my natural defense and I'm able to wear such heavy armor. Which makes this even more of a tanky build, and I really like the way I feel. I feel like I can't be staggered when I'm attacking. I'm this walking, immovable tank. As for the moveset of the weapon, it is that of a standard Greathammer, so if you're two-handing it and using the light attacks, you're going to have a horizontal swing, and the startup is a little bit slow, but remember your hyper armor is going to tank through any attack, so as long as you start up your attack before your enemy initializes theirs, you're going to be fine. As for the one-handed attacks, they're forward vertical slam attacks, and I don't find myself using them that often because they cover less area. I'm a fan of the two-handed attacks. As for the weapon art, it is a buff, but it's also a forward spinning attack that lands 2 consecutive hits. And during that attack, you actually have a lot of hyper armor. So at any point during a battle, when I wish to buff my weapon, I wait for the opponent to give me an opening, and I try to hit them with the weapon art, seeing as it's extra damage and it buffs my weapon either way, so it's a win-win for you. There is also a second part to this weapon art. Once your weapon is buffed, it does a lot more damage, yes, and the damage added is a physical damage, so that's pretty amazing. But it also gives you the ability to have a ranged attack. If you charge your R2 fully, you're going to shatter all the rocks that have gathered around your weapon, and they're going to go flying in every direction. And oftentimes, you'll hit the enemy with one and it does at least 200 damage. It's pretty good. They never really see it coming because sometimes I use it forgetting that it does that, and then I'm like, oh, and it finishes them off. As for the rocks flying off in every direction, you have to fully charge to the point where your character does the animation for the heavy attack himself. If you let go beforehand, you're just going to do a standard heavy attack and the rocks aren't going to come flying off. It's a very deceptive weapon art. And I'd also like to add that you should try to keep your weapon buffed at all times. I mean, it does more damage, there's no reason not to. And you can just use the weapon art as an opening move. And that's pretty much all that I have to say on the weapon. So I'm going to bring you on over to my stats and gear. That way you guys can take a look at what I was using for this build, and you have a good idea of some optimal stats for this weapon. As I mentioned earlier in this video, this weapon is a pure strength weapon, so you're going to want to hit the hard cap with your strength stat, which is 66, and it gives you an overall AR of 681. But once you buff the weapon with the weapon art, your AR jumps all the way up to 732, and that's physical damage, so that's pretty impressive. After you've invested your points into strength, you're going to need some vitality, especially since this weapon is so damn heavy, and I personally like to wear the Ring Knight armor set, so I up my vitality all the way to 35. Keep in mind I'm wearing the Prisoner's Chain, so I have an extra 5 vitality, endurance, and vigor. And after I had my weight ratio in check, the rest of my points were spread evenly between vigor and endurance. But you can really do whatever you like with the rest of your points. I just find that I need a lot of endurance to swing this weapon around as freely as I like, and I wanted a pretty decent health pool. Moving on to the actual equipment for the build, I'm using the Ledos Greathammer, of course, which has an A scaling in strength and is the reason that my strength needed to be so damn high. And it also weighs 28 pounds, so keep that in mind when you're doing your weight ratio. I also keep a simple Caestus on my offhand because it slowly rebuilds my FP, and as I buff my weapon, I know I'm going to run out of my FP because I don't have a huge FP pool. As for the armor set, I'm wearing the whole Ring Knight armor set, which is surprising with this weapon. I actually had enough weight ratio to keep this in check. It looks awesome to me, and it has pretty good absorption even when I'm using the Prisoner's Chain. As for the rings I'm wearing the Chloranthy Ring plus 3 because Ledos Greathammer takes up a great amount of stamina and I want it to rebuild as fast as it possibly can. I'm wearing the Prisoner's Chain because since the patch, it actually doesn't drop your damage absorption by that much, so honestly, I find it well worth the 15 levels you get for wearing it. And in my third ring slot, I have the Ring of Favor plus 3, which is a staple ring. I have it in most of my builds. There's rare occurrences where I won't have it. It ups your health, your stamina, and your equipment load. Like, it's amazing. And in my final ring slot, I have the life ring +3 because it gives me an extra 10% health, and I know I'm going to be trading a lot with this weapon. So, that's pretty much the build, guys. Let me know what you think about the weapon in the comments. I mean, I personally love it. It flattens everyone, and it has high AR, and I'm really liking heavy weapons lately. But, yeah. As always, I want to thank you guys for watching, and if you're not subscribed and just tuning in now, subscribe for some more Dark Souls 3 content, guys. Also, like the video if you like the video. It helps me out a lot. Anyways, thanks guys. Chase the bro out.